Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're so glad that you're taking the time to tune in to White Mountain Approves. My name is Ken, and I'm coming to you tonight with Dave and Ian and Keith on board. And today we got a great broadcast. We're going to talk about a phenomenal hike that Dave and Ian just completed. And then we're going to talk about some cold weather attitudes and how cold affects us. And then we're going to do a quick glove review on some Eastern Mountain gear and also some outdoor research gear on gloves and mitts and stuff like that. So without any further ado, Dave, Ian, you guys just had a phenomenal hike up Mount Madison, and my hat goes off to you because I know it was really cold up there. But tell us about this hike.
Yeah, so that was my 45 out of 48. We got to the trailhead for 7. Temp was 0 at the car. I had the anemometer. It was blowing 16 miles an hour, so wind chill was pretty cold. Once we got into the trees, it wasn't bad, though. Hiking up, there were a couple other groups of people. It was spikes all the way. Past the Valleyway campsite, we probably could have used snowshoes, but there were actually some girls that were coming down that caught the sunrise, and they only had spikes, and they said that it was pretty much bare boot up top with rocks, so it didn't seem, it was one of those things where you just don't put your snowshoes on for a half a mile or less because it's just more of a pain than anything else. So we got to the hut, had some snacks, got some sunshine, and then we headed on for the push to the summit, and it was crazy. We didn't follow the trail for most of the way up, which probably made it a little more difficult than it had to be. But I got up there, gorgeous views. Wind was about 30 miles an hour. We got that down the anemometer, got some pics, got some videos, and headed down.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I did a quick little research. I went online and looked at wind gauges and charts, and they were saying like at 10 degrees with 30-mile-an-hour winds, it's probably about 25 to 30 below. I don't know how accurate that was, but I was like, dang, that's like really, really cold.
It was certainly cold. I was right down to my base layers when we started going up, and I stayed just in my base layer up until we got just before the Madison hut. We did encounter a couple of other folks on the trail going up. There was a couple of young ladies coming down. They had been up there for the sunrise. But we took the Valleyway Trail, which was, it's a nice trail. It's gradual at the beginning. It's moderate after that, and you follow the valley, or I should say the ravine with the Snyder Brook. There is a trail off of that called, I believe it was the Watson Trail. And actually, now that I think of the Watson Trail, we did encounter a couple of other gentlemen that took the Watson Trail. It did not look like it was broken out. And as Ian mentioned, we were able to just wear our spikes. It looked like the night before there was some probably 2 or 3 inches of new precipitation, some new snow on the trail, and the folks in front of us perhaps packed a little bit of it down. But it did get a little deeper as we got some elevation up towards, as Ian mentioned, the 10 site, and we probably could have used our snowshoes at that point. But when in the trees on the trail, there wasn't a lot of wind. It stayed cold the entire time. It was crystal clear, which was really nice. And then once we broke out by the hut, you could hear the wind and you could feel it. And that's when we stopped. We layered up. We put all of our layers on. I actually broke up my heavy jacket, added that. And one of the things that caught me for this hike, and I mentioned it to Ian, and it was something that he brought up in one of the other episodes that we did. My goggles were buried, so I had to take off my mittens. I had to pull out a bunch of stuff out of my pack, and it was just a hassle. So, I should know better. I should keep those right up top so I can get to them, but I didn't. They were buried in there. So that's a good tip for everybody. If you know you're going to be using something, keep it up towards the top of your pack, because I know you guys, and you're probably the same as me. I got a lot of stuff in there, so you got to pull half of that crap out, and then it's laying all over the ground. And there was a little bit of snow, so it was sort of a little bit of a hassle. And then once we started up that final ascent, the rock area, sort of the summit cone, that was all. It was bare rock. There was some ice and snow in between the rocks, but very surprisingly, that was all exposed. It was wind blown, which you would expect, but a couple of years ago when I did Adams, that was all snowed in. It was just a big cone of snow. But this year, there's just not a lot of snowpack up there, so those rocks were all out in the open. And like Ian said, we ended up off the trail just because some of those rocks, it's easier to go around them than over them because there's some big ones. And yeah, we ended up on the side. And I know at one point Ian said when we found on the way down, it was easier going, and it was because we were actually right on, I believe, the trail. But yeah, it was a really nice day.
Some final thoughts on that. It was funny. We kind of pondered on whether we were going to do it or not. And we both said on the way up that we got sick of seeing pictures on days that we decided to bail of the hike. And there were some phenomenal sunrise pictures that were taken on Madison by those two girls that we passed on the way down. So we definitely would have been mad if we didn't get out there yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the Valleyway Trail, which is the one we ultimately decided on doing, it's about, I think it was 3.8 miles to the hut, Ian?
Yep.
Is that what it was?
Came out to about 8.4 roughly, I think.
It's a great trail. And I haven't been up that neck of the woods in a while. And Ian mentioned it to me on the way up that there's a lot of intersecting trails at the beginning of the hike. And I pulled up the map tonight, and it's like holy smokes, it's like spaghetti down there at the bottom of that mountain with trails. There's a lot of different trails and a lot of different choices that you have, which is pretty neat. It's definitely a great mountain.
Yeah, that's a great selling point again on the need for people to have maps with them. Because there can be a network of trails and it'd be easy to get turned around, and now you don't even know what trail you are on after a while. So, wow. Well, again, hats off to you. I know that was a brutal hike. It was cold, and you guys did it. I know Keith and I were geared up. We had our packs geared up. We're sitting in my pickup truck, and I'm like, I don't know, Keith. I just don't think this is a good idea. Yeah. So we pulled back. Keith, you might want to comment on this. I know that when we did Adams, of course, it was in the summer. We went up the Skyline Trail, which is a terrifying 25. I didn't even realize it at the time, but we went up Adams on the Skyline, and then from Adams down to the hut, and then up Madison, and then out by the Valleyway Trail. And you said it was 3.8 miles?
From the hut to Appalachia.
Yeah, for some reason, for us, it felt like it was 30.8 miles. I mean,
that trail seemed like it didn't want to end, but we had already done two over 5,000 peaks at that point. So,
yeah, that trail was brutal going out. But well, good for you guys. That's awesome. Ian, what do you have left? It sounds like you're really getting down to the finish line.
Jefferson, and then Carter Dome and South.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yep.
You should be able to nail those out, no problem.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. So again, congratulations on that. Sounded like a wonderful hike. I saw some pics. It did turn out to be a beautiful day. Just a little cold for me, but we also wanted to talk about that a little bit, like how are our body thermometers wired, and what becomes too cold for an individual person. And so who wants to jump on that? Who wants to talk about that? Like when you look at a hike, for you, what's your comfort zone? I came across a term the other day, and it was HOYH in the hiking community, and it stands for hike your own hike. And so I like that, because each one, we're all different, and we all have different comfort zones. So who wants to jump in on that? Like what, Dave, you mentioned that you can get cold, and so.
I mean, I'll jump in just to start the conversation off. For me, the first thing the thing that I notice that happens to me very quickly, and it typically happens when I'm putting my boots and snowshoes on at the trailhead, is my hands get really cold very quickly. For some reason, as I've gotten older, my hands are very sensitive now to the real cold temperatures. So that tip of throwing a pair of hand warmers right into my mittens always is sort of save the day. But so for me, it's my hands first. On the flip side of that, I've got good. My feet typically don't get cold, So I'm fortunate in that respect that once I get everything on, my feet typically throughout the entire hike, they stay warm. I have had a pair of boots recently that they get a little cold in, but yesterday on Madison, I used my Solomon, and man, my feet were good. So for me, it's my hands get cold, but you know, a lot of people have cold feet. Mine don't. And you know, my core, because I'm working up a sweat going up, or I try not to in the winter, but usually my core stays a little bit warm, and my legs are typically good. But for me, it's always in the hands.
Nice. Yeah, that's a blessing. So, I mean, yeah, when you get older, you change. But I mean, Dave, at 40, is it really bothering you that much?
Well, you know, I hope next year when I hit 40, it won't be too bad. But for right now, it's starting to get there. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, who's next?
Well, I will. Being the oldest in the group, I'll talk a little bit about how your body changes. For me, I really haven't noticed any difference over time, to be honest with you. But I have done very little high altitude, really cold, windy hiking. So yesterday's hike, I was a little nervous. I didn't know how prepared I'd be for that. And so instead, we chose to do a more local hike in Pawtuckaway. And what I discovered is that my legs were cold up in my thigh area. So if I'd gone on that hike, I imagine my legs would have been really cold. For me, my feet typically do not get cold. In fact, when I come back from a hike anytime, my socks are always sweaty. So I don't have an issue with that. My hands, as long as I don't expose them too long to the environment, they're usually good. I guess the biggest concern after that would be my face. I really do get cold in my face first. My head seems to be fine with the hat I wear. So, you know, as I age, like I said, I really don't notice a difference. I guess some people, they age to become more of a wimp, but I'm pretty good. But I think now, if I get to go on a hike similar to that, I will probably wear a base layer under my hiking pants, which I typically don't do because I don't usually get that cold. That's my 2 cents.
Ian, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm a furnace. I really don't have any, I haven't experienced a major problem hiking in the cold yet. I always make sure I have a spare base layer so that the biggest enemy is sweat. When you get wet, you're going to have a problem, especially if you slow down. So the biggest thing for me is just keeping a good pace so that I don't get crazy sweaty, working enough to keep warm but not soak through all my clothes. But I carry a spare top base layer if I need it, and then spare socks. And then I'm always in my base layer while I'm hiking. And then I got my puffy, and then I've got my wind water layer. And then I also have a pair of long johns in my bag and a pair of rain pants in my bag. So I barely ever pull that. I never pull out the lower stuff, but I pulled out the puffy and the wind layer for the top of Madison yesterday. But really just staying at a good pace so I'm not getting too wet. That's my major thing.
Cool.
Yeah, PK, before you jump in with how it affects you, that's something that we did yesterday. And we talked about it as we started the hike. We wanted to make sure that we stayed dry because we knew there was a wind chill up there. So we just, Ian set the pace. He led the hike, and he kept a very consistent pace. And we were able to actually stay dry. When I got to the hut, I was still nice and dry, which enabled me just to throw an additional layer on without having to change any clothes, which was nice.
Cool.
Yeah, we averaged about 1.5 miles an hour on the way up.
Yeah. Well, for me, and of course, you know, I can't tell my side without telling a story that goes along with the whole thing. But when I hike in the winter, I know that like my legs and my torso really don't get cold at all. I can brave all of that stuff, and it's not a problem. The only time I felt cold on my legs, I think, Dave, was that day on top of Jackson, and that was just a unique Antarctic day. You know, the wind was blowing right through my marmot scree pants, which is really unusual. I've never even experienced that before. My legs and torso are fine. My hands and my feet, on the other hand, are a completely different story. So I think part of the reason might be I was talking to a guy that I knew that was former Special Forces, and he was saying that when you've experienced frostbite in your hand or feet or any part of your body, that becomes more sensitive. And then, of course, as you get older, I think things change, as we were talking about. So when I was like 15, 16 years old, I used to do a lot of snowshoeing as a kid, just in the backwoods behind my house. And back then, I only had a pair of like leather work gloves and a pair of leather Timberland boots. And so I would go out for like hours in the winter snowshoeing. And by the time I got home, like my feet and my hands, I couldn't feel them. They were like totally, if they weren't frostbitten, they were frost nipped. You know, that's like a lower degree. And I remember like having to put them under water. And then the first feeling I would get is a sensation of just pain, like tormenting pain as they would thaw out. And that happened, you know, that had to have happened like at least a dozen times in all the winters that I'd go snowshoeing as a kid. So I don't know if that affects me, but for some reason, my hands and my feet, I've tried everything and they just get really cold really, really fast. And it really, it is a problem because it does, it makes me think twice before going on certain hikes. And I am trying toe warmers now and I am trying hand warmers, and, you know, they help. But for some reason, they just freeze right up. And for some reason, it's really weird because it seems to be my left hand, left foot, and especially my big toe and my thumb. They just go cold right off the bat. So yeah, it definitely weighs in on my decision on how much I want to push that envelope. You know, I mean, technically I could do it, but it's not going to be a fun hike. Yeah. I mean, if I'm hurting and if I'm like really freezing, it's not a fun hike. So I guess everybody is different in that sense, but I'm still looking for a solution to, you know, how to make that go away. I haven't found anything yet. We'll talk about that a little bit as we get into the glove reviews, but
yeah. PK, so a question for you. Once they get cold, do they warm up at any point during the hike, or is that it? Once you sort of get in that state where they're starting to be painful, is that it?
Yeah, they'll start warming up, you know, if I'm really pushing hard, but they won't like warm up like within a minute or 2 minutes. Yeah. Like it'll take like a good 10 or 15 minutes of pushing really hard on a trail. So the downside goes going down. You know, it's like you're not pushing that hard going down, obviously. Yeah. And hand warmers help a little bit, but I find like if I'm wearing mitts, the hand warmer always goes into the finger section, and that thumb, or both thumbs, you know, are still just like left there. Sometimes I'll stick a smaller hand warmer just into that thumb pocket to bring heat to the thumbs. And they'll help a little bit, but I think I need to buy some better hand warmers, or at least maybe some newer ones that still activate. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. All right. So I'm sure you viewers, you all have your own stories, and that's, you know, part of everybody's different, and that's cool. But we're going to transition into talking about some gloves specifically. So who wants to go first on that? What are your glove stories?
I'll take that one. So actually, I picked these up last year. They're Outdoor Research Transcendent Mittens.
They are now on my get list.
So it's actually kind of funny because they're long enough, and what I actually do, if I need to, is I'll put the hand warmer in the pocket, and then I just put my thumb in there too, and you can actually pretty much make a fist with them. But they're 650 fill down, and they actually get hot enough to the point where I have to pull my hand out for a little bit, or just kind of do like the fingertips in the glove to kind of let them cool down a little bit. I was a little bit actually worried about them yesterday because on Madison I was grabbing rocks and stuff. So I thought I was actually going to tear them up and I might need to buy a new pair, but they held up really well. Yeah, they're great mittens. I would recommend these to anybody. Biggest thing too is I just got home and I put them on the boot dryer because my hands were sweating in them. So I just stuck them on the boot dryer and now they're good as new, ready to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Good. Keith, you wanna jump in next? Talk about your glove stories.
Yeah, I have some EMS brand gloves that I've been wearing now for, I'd say 3 years. They're kind of a, I don't know, poly type finish on the outside. The mitt has kind of almost a leather-like surface. It looks like it can breathe, and the cuff on it is really long, and it has a pull strap on it, and also has a strap on the side where you can adjust it tight to your wrist. Plus, there's this one string here that you can use it like I use. I put it through the strap on my pack. I'm not wearing it, so I can carry them and get at them easy enough on it. and they dry really quick, which is surprising. I don't wear these by themselves. I always have a pair of liners that come with it. So if I find my hands getting warm, I'll pull the gloves off and I'll wear the liners just by themselves, because my hands typically will stay warm unless it's really cold and windy. And if I start feeling cool, I'll slide the gloves back on. But once I get home, if they could feel a little damp, I just leave them out overnight and they're dry and ready to go the next day. So they seem to have held up well. I wear them a lot. I like them a lot, and they are really inexpensive. I think maybe between $15, $20 I might have paid for this as a set. It might have even been on sale at the time, but they work well for me. That's it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they might have been a little more expensive than that. You might have gotten them on sale, but yeah. So, Dave, you want to go?
Cheap if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, PK, I have a couple of different systems that I use on my gloves. Let me get a screen here so that you guys can see them. The ones that I use are Outdoor Research Meteor Mitts, and they're right here. So I really like these. They actually could be a little bit warmer, so I think at some point I'm going to invest in a pair of the ones that Ian has as well. I think Outdoor Research OR makes some really high quality equipment. What I like about these is it does have the extended cuff. So as in the case in point for yesterday, I was able to get a pair on and get them above sort of my wrist so that it protected that open skin that you typically have between your jacket. The other thing I like about these is I'm able to put this strap on my hand and cinch it down. And this is pretty handy especially for me, because I do take a lot of pictures. So I don't have to worry about my mitten, especially if it's windy or if there's snow, because if they hit the ground and there's loose snow, it's going to get inside the cuff of the glove. So it's nice to be able to just pull it off, have it dangle from your wrist. You can manipulate the camera, your phone, and it's right there so that you can get your hand right back into it. So I really like these. These were $79. Yeah, nice pair of mittens. They're warm. Like I said, they could be a little bit warmer, but when I do get a hand warmer in these, man, these are really good gloves, and they've standed up. I've actually washed them once, where I've soaked them, wringed them out, put them on my shoe dryer. It is made up of a dual system, and PK, me and you had this issue when we were up on Jackson. It does have a fleece liner, and one of the problems with the fleece liner is if your hands are wet and you jam your hand into that mitten, you're actually going to take that fleece liner, drop it back down into the mitten and ball it up. So, and that was the exact problem that we had on Jackson. I was trying to get my numb hand, which was a little bit swollen from the cold, I was trying to get it back in, and I couldn't get it in. It was A, too tight, but B, I kept pushing that liner in, and it was balled up. So actually what I've done to fix that is I've put a couple of stitches of just regular thread holding the liners up. So right now I can just jam my hand in and it's going to go in, and the liner is going to stay in the position it needs to. So if I ever needed to clean them, take them apart, it's only a couple stitches of thread. I could simply break that stitch, clean them, and do what I need to do. So these are really great. I love these, definitely good. And then another thing that I wear for when it's a little bit cooler, and like Keith said, sometimes you heat up and he'll pull his liners out, but I do have just a smaller pair of sort of neoprene. I believe these are Black Diamond. Yeah, they're just thin neoprene gloves, and they're nice. So if I'm starting out and the hike's not terribly cold, I can throw these on. And these are a little bit nicer because I can manipulate things with the fingers. They're not a mitten type. So those are my two systems.
Nice, yeah. Outdoor Research is definitely great gear, and good shout out to that company. And Dave, you're a funny guy. You always leave everything in stitches, so that's
Thanks.
So when it starts getting fall, I'll just wear a pair of wool gloves, and I use hiking poles a lot, so I'll use these. And until it starts getting cold, too cold for these, I'll still carry them in my pack just as a backup or to use as an insert in some of the mitts I use. And the only thing about wool is if it's a real windy day, the wind's going to go right through it. So just for a try, I found these at my local Ace Hardware, and these are Kinko Hydra Flectors, and they're rubber, and they've got a great liner. And so when I saw these gloves, I thought these are going to be perfect. And I don't remember how much I paid. Well, they might have been like $18 or something like that. The problem is that the one time that I wore them hiking, it was a really cold day, and I froze in these things. So I've never really used. The good thing is they're made out of like a rubber, so that wind is not going to go through that. Snow is not going to melt and get through that because they're a rubberized glove. I should probably give them another try because you know, they look cool. I mean, you know, so I'll give them another try just to be fair. And then like Keith, I do have the EMS mittens. I think we got them around the same time. I think they were around $35, and they have the liner in them as well. And I found that, like, for me, these are the warmest things I've got right now. You know, if I'm hiking and I'm pushing hard, these things, my hand will even be sweating in them. I've tried using the liners, and I found out that for some reason, sometimes the liners didn't help me that much. And so I took the liners off, and just the mitt itself was working fine. And then I used to use these. I've had these since I was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old. These are a pair of leather ski mobile mittens, and they've got the little fur gauntlet. They got a really nice long gauntlet, goes halfway down my forearm, and I've got long arms. They're leather, so no wind's going through. They do have, you know, some type of liner on the inside. But even these, I find that like my hands and my thumbs will still get cold in these. If I wear these with these wool liners on the inside, it usually helps. It's usually a warm fix. So I've got to experiment more with getting out in the cold and trying it. And one of my things is I don't want to experiment on a 4,000 footer. I don't want to get up and find out that I'm freezing. So I just got to do some smaller hikes and maybe some stuff in Pawtuckaway Park, and just really like cold weather and see, you know, what combination is going to work best. I definitely, you know, I like the puffies, Ian. I'm pretty sure I was hearing God saying you should just buy another pair and give me those. But anyways, one of the things I just want to throw out there, why I really like mitts over gloves, is that I can give these guys the finger and they never see it in this when we're hiking. And so that's a plus of the mittens. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I haven't found the perfect combination that keeps my hands warm. Ian, I absolutely envy you when you were saying that you're just hot. Your feet and your hands really don't get cold. It's like, I would love to even know what that feels like, honestly, because, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm snowshoeing and my feet just like go numb, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, you know, toe warmers and, you know, yeah, it's a tragedy.
You know, that's not the first time. That's not the first time I've heard that Ian's hot stuff.
Yeah. Well, Caroline is throwing some
exactly.
No doubt. But yeah, so that's about it. Any parting shots from any of you guys on some of the stuff we covered?
No, I mean that's great. Nothing more to add other than I hope this week gets a little better in terms of the weather, so we can get out there perhaps next weekend.
Yeah.
It's definitely cold. I know I was looking at Wednesday. Wednesday's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm thinking I'm going to bust out. I want to do Mount Height. That's been on my bucket list, and I thought I'm just going to just solo Mount Height. And then I looked it up earlier this evening, and I saw wind chills at 30 to 35 below zero, and I'm like, oh no, that's a hard no for me. But yeah, well, all right. If there's nothing else, thanks for tuning in again. Hey, remind friends in the hiking community that we're doing this service. We're doing these broadcasts. We're having a lot of fun with it. We do giveaways from time to time. So like us and check us out, follow us. And other than that, stay safe and enjoy your hiking experience.
See you on the trail.
Take care, everyone.
Well,